And we do know, don't we, that Prince Charles, now King Charles, has said before that he would quite like to slim down the monarchy, a bit like those other European royal families. So what's going on?
Let's talk to Norman Baker, former Home Office Minister, of course, but also royal author. Morning to you, Norman. Good to see you. What do you make of all of this?
Morning, Stephen. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting that Denmark's done this. Denmark's already got a much slimmer monarchy than we have in this country. And the cost of the Danish monarchy, for example, was about £10 million a year. Ours is probably £280 million a year, taking account of security. So they've already got a much smaller monarchy, or smaller country, of course, but nevertheless. What they're doing here, I think, is Queen Margrethe taking away, as you say, titles from 4 of her grandchildren, including Prince Nikolai, who is a model and said to be sad and shocked by the turn of events. I think is simply reflecting reality, which is the standard monarchy in European countries these days is becoming the monarch and his or her consort, then the immediate heir and his or her partner, and then their children. And in a way, that's what we should have over here, I think. Charles and Camilla, William and Kate, and then their children. And really, the rest of them need not be there, in my view. I mean, so I think this is a standard move across Europe, and we ought to be replicating it here.
Interesting as well that we saw at the Queen's funeral that Queen Margrethe from Denmark was talking and clearly knows King Charles very, very well indeed. And so there's speculation as to whether they've actually been talking about this very subject.
Well, we don't know, of course, but it may well have been, because Charles is on record as saying he wants to slim down the monarchy. I think it's important if he does so for the future of the monarchy, as a matter of fact, as much as anything else. But it needs to be slimmed down in financial terms, not simply in numerical terms. But look, there's a precedent here already, because while Prince Andrew was very keen to ensure that his daughters were HRH, and made a big fuss about that and wanted them included in the court circular and so on, Princess Anne, in my view, took a much more sensible approach by saying that her children should not have the royal titles. They should be ordinary people and should get on with their lives, and they shouldn't be encumbered, as she saw it, by those titles. And I think she was absolutely right on that.
Look, Norman, to move away to a different issue, I can see you've still got a red box behind you. You've not let that go from your time in government. You were involved in the Department of Transport back in the day, 10 years or so ago. What do you make of these strikes that we're seeing with more train strikes today? It's going to be chaos for the next few weeks, isn't it?
Well, it is, I'm afraid. And I'm also part-time external director of external affairs for the Campaign for Better Transport, which is the country's leading transport charity. And our aim is to get people onto public transport for economic, social and environmental reasons. And I'm afraid that these strikes have the opposite effect. They deter people from getting on public transport, and that's not a good outcome, because if they move on to cars, they cause congestion on our streets, which doesn't help motorists either, or they transfer to planes sometimes, which are very polluting, or they stay at home when they want to go out. So we want to see an end to these strikes, all of us, I think, and the answer is really quite simple, I think. There's a deal to be done. The deal is that the unions accept that they have to shed some of these old practices which really have no place in the 21st century, for example, on Sunday working and so on. But in return, the money which is released from that, because there will be money released from that, is used to give them a decent pay rise. And that's the deal which everybody knows is there. It's a question of how they get to it.